Okay, so we're back again talking about another form of physical change, and that is phase changes. Something you should be familiar with. You've been exposed to this throughout your scientific academic learning, right? So nothing shocking here. You should be familiar with the solid, liquid, and gas phase. Those are the three that we're going to focus on in this class. Some student always asks me about plasma. We're not going to talk about plasma in here, but if we ask about the three phases in this course, we're talking about solids, liquids, and gases, okay? And so we usually think about water when we consider these phase changes. In solid form, of course, water is, we call it ice, right? Water in its normal state, this is the normal state. It's in its liquid phase. This also includes steam, right? It's still liquid in that particular state. So you're in the condensation, like we talked about with boiling water, it's still going to be in a liquid state. And then finally, the gas phase, which is not visible, right? So water can be in that phase as well. We talked about in the last, when we first talked about physical change and then chemical changes, we mentioned that in the burning of fire, in the burning of wood, that was a chemical change, and one of the things that it produces, oddly enough, is H2O. We wouldn't normally think of that as being produced, and then the reason why is because that H2O is in gas form whenever you burn wood. So anyway, these are the three phases: solid, liquid, and gas. And when it goes from a solid to a liquid, we know that as melting. Right? When ice melts, it turns into a liquid, and in order for that to happen, you have to add energy. So just kind of thinking about as you go from one phase to the next, energy is required. You add energy in order for this solid to turn into a liquid and melt, right? We call this processing going from a liquid to a gas, this is vaporizing. All right? And again, as we go in this direction from solid to liquid to gas, we always have to add energy in order to go to the next phase. Now, when we go back in the other direction, we're doing the opposite. Instead of adding energy, as you go from a gas back to a liquid, we're going to have to remove energy in order for that to happen. Okay, and we call that condensing. I just mentioned condensation. The gas turning back into a liquid. And then finally, you remove energy to go from the liquid state back into the solid state. And of course, if we think about water, you should be familiar with this term, freezing, right? As it goes from liquid back into solid. So those are kind of the way we go from, this is normally the process, right? You go in this direction, you kind of hit this liquid phase in the middle, but it is possible to skip a phase. For example, if you go straight from solid directly to gas, we call that sublimation, all right? So that is possible. So anyway, make sure that you understand what the phases are. Kind of make sure that you understand these terms. Let me kind of circle this area here. These are really the ones that we're going to kind of focus on. When we talk about melting and vaporizing, knowing that that's melting solid to a liquid, liquid to gas is called vaporizing, gas back to a liquid is condensing, liquid back to a solid is freezing. And then make sure that you understand as you go in this direction, you're having to add energy in order for that to happen. Energy is required as you go from solid. That should make sense, right? We add heat, energy in the form of heat, and we're able to melt the ice and turn it into a liquid. We add more heat, and we take the liquid and we turn it into a gas. So it should make sense that we're adding energy there, whereas here we're removing energy. And since a liquid requires energy to evaporate, that's why our body cools down when we sweat. Because as the sweat evaporates, in other words, what's happening is that it's turning to a gas, right? So as it evaporates off of our body, it absorbs heat from our body in order for that process to take place, in order for that phase change to take place. And so the result is we're cooled down. heat energy is being removed from our body, and we're cooled down as that sweat turns into a gas. So pretty cool the way the Lord made us. But just make sure you know these three phases. If I ask you for those three phases, this physical change, then you should be able to tell me it's a solid, liquid, and gas. And you should be able to tell me, that we're adding energy going in that direction, we're removing energy going back in the other. All right? I will see you in the next lecture.